Hey guys, and welcome to the official podcast of Development Unplugged. We're super excited to be here. And what's up? Oh, I got some signs behind the scenes and I was like, what's this about? Okay, so I'm being told that it's episode 7 because last time I said episode 8 before I said episode 6. So, yes, today is episode 7. And this is a very, very important episode because we're going to be talking about insecurities. We're going to be talking about fears. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time here at Develop Your Element, what we focus on is entrepreneurship, well-being, personal development, all kinds of things to do with your day-to-day lives, and both in terms of career and family and romantic life and things like that. So the examples and the topics of conversation today will include different areas of your life. And we're basically going to try to talk about fears in this particular episode. But in every episode, we try to contextualize the things we're covering so that we don't come across as a one-size-fits-all solution, so that we don't give you advice that might work for me and might not work for you, or that might work for my sister and might not work for me or for someone else. And we have to give context every time we talk about things, because the more context we have, the more likely we are to be able to apply something in our own lives. And we also try to take into account different personality types, not to put you in a box, not to limit you, not to define you, none of that. We don't even give you personality tests, but we do try to explore how different personalities really find optimal level of social stimulus, structure, organization, how they have different instincts, and how by allowing certain stimulus and embracing certain parts of their personality, they're going to have more energy and flexibility to step out of their personality in key moments. So we don't want to limit you to a certain personality. We don't want to come across as, oh, you're this personality, so you can't do this. Every type of personality can do anything they put their mind to, but the reality is some people have certain challenges. You know, some people have different processes. So I'm joined here by my sister. And for those of you who don't know her, she's Itzel.
Hello, everyone.
And I'm Jannik. And so it's going to be a good episode.
Yeah.
And lots to cover.
Yeah, it's a very exciting topic because insecurities and fears are a thing that can get in the way a lot of times. You know, if we're feeling very insecure in a certain social situation, it's very easy to get paralyzed or to respond based on instincts in sort of panic mode. And we don't have a lot of clarity when we're in that situation. So we definitely need to start looking at, okay, how do we start managing our insecurities? How do we start managing our fears so that they don't become a paralyzing aspect of our life, or so that they don't become a destructive aspect of our lives?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about fears, the important thing about fears is we have fears for a reason, right? It's a survival instinct. It's a self-preservation instinct. It's something that sometimes can save us from dangerous moments or from making mistakes. And fears have their place. Yeah. Even insecurities have their place. Sometimes they make us step up and analyze how to improve things. But there's a big difference between having fears that save our lives and having insecurities that might make us step up the quality of our work, because, okay, maybe this area, it's not my strong point, but if I develop it, that's great. But there's a big difference between that, which can be positive cases of fear, and fears where they paralyze us, where they freeze us, where they stop us from pursuing our goals, where they stop us from really stepping out of our comfort zone, right? So we discuss a lot this idea that the important thing is to give more importance to our goals than our fears. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily about eliminating fears. I mean, there are some fears that are irrational and unhealthy, and we want to get rid of them. And there are different ways to approach that, and we have several tips on that. But the moment you decide that something is more important than those fears, a lot of things changes. Yeah. A fun fact, there are many different versions of this quote by many different famous people over the years. Mm-hmm. I think this is something that there are certain types of people that have reached certain types of success despite their fears, and they've all expressed in different ways. But there's certain precedents and politicians and celebrities have expressed it with different words. And that's the saying that courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the decision that something is more important than that fear.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very, very good starting point when you have a fear that's affecting you. It's understand that everyone has fears.
Yeah.
It's a biological thing that every single human being on this planet has some types of fears.
Yeah.
Whether they acknowledge it or not, whether it's conscious or subconscious, that's a different story. But it's just part of our biology as humans to have fears. So it's unrealistic and unhealthy to go around life with this mentality of let's get rid of all our fears. We should embrace them, but just be self-aware enough to understand when those fears might be affecting us in a really suboptimal way, and when we can really take control and get unstuck.
Yeah. And what you said about making your goals more important than your fears, I think is a really important point. It's one of those things that when you first hear it, it sounds easier said than done. You hear that and you're like, yeah, but my fears are right here, right now. And yeah, you have to allow yourself that process. It's not necessarily an overnight thing. Sometimes it is. Sometimes something just clicks for you and something just makes sense all of a sudden. And you're like, you know what? This is more important than what's been going on. This is more important than my insecurities. This is more important than my fears. But if it's not that instant, if it's not that, instinctive response that suddenly comes up, you do kind of have to train yourself to start looking at, okay, what are the goals I'm trying to achieve? And in a later episode, we're actually going to talk a lot more about goals, short-term goals, long-term goals, how they influence each other, how you can use them to support each other. But the way that relates to your fears is, okay, what are my long-term goals? What are my short-term goals? And how much value do those have? Like, how much investment am I willing to put into that? How much energy am I willing to put into it? How much emotional energy am I willing to put into it? How much effort? How many mistakes am I willing to let myself make along the way? If you're learning to play the piano, you're going to mess up a lot of the time before you get there.
That's a very important point. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to emphasize that point. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to fail. We're all going to receive rejection. And if we're not being rejected and if we're not failing, it's because we're not innovating and we're not stepping out of our comfort zone and we're paralyzed.
Yeah.
So we have to embrace failure.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw an interesting post on Instagram, and while many times I get a bit critical of inspirational Instagram posts, this one kind of triggered something in me. It was like, it said something like, your first podcast is gonna suck. Your first video is gonna suck. Your first article is gonna suck. Your first public speaking gig is gonna suck. And I don't like generalizations, but it basically said, but the first time you do something, it's probably gonna suck.
Yeah.
And then, but if you don't go through those first ones where you kind of suck, how are you gonna get to the 50th one where you kill it, right?
Yeah.
Because while I don't want to generalize and say, ooh, the first time it's gonna suck. If you have the mentality of, ooh, I need to be perfect from day one, you're not allowing that learning curve.
Yeah.
And with any skill set, I mean, you don't go to a martial arts teacher and tell him, oh, I don't want to get hit, right? No, you go there with the mentality of learning to elevate your defenses, to be able to counter punch, and you become better at it through practice, through getting hurt in the process. I mean, most Olympians have gotten injured while they've trained to get to the Olympics. And that's something we have to understand, that when we want to practice to get somewhere, if it's a skill set, it's very likely that it's something we have to develop. And it's called develop your element for a reason. It's not identify your element. And the saying develop your element comes from the saying of being in your element, being your best self. So it's not just about identify where you're kind of strongest, it's also developing it further.
Yeah.
And with any area of your life, you can develop skills that help you.
Yeah.
Social skills you can develop, you can practice. I mean, introverts can easily do certain exercises. Well, I say easily. It might be challenging and it might be generate certain anxiety, but they certainly can do certain exercises that help them come across as more socially confident.
Yeah.
Even if in the beginning it's a bit, faking it till you make it, the more practice you get, the more comfortable you get with it.
Yeah.
And that's something we have to embrace, that process, the learning process.
Yeah, and that's where the danger comes in of letting your fears paralyze you, because you get into that situation where maybe you do the first thing and maybe it sucks.
Yeah.
And you think that moment defines you.
Yeah.
It feels so personal because you've invested a lot of energy, a lot of time. You've thought about it, you've dreamt about it, and it sucks. So it feels like a personal attack. If anyone points it out to you, like, hey, you can improve this area. Hey, you could do this differently. Hey, have you thought about developing these skills? It feels really personal. And the instinct there is, okay, I can't do that anymore because I can't look bad. I can't let my reputation suffer. I can't let this or that suffer. So I'm just going to not go there anymore. But then you're robbing yourself of certain experiences. And especially if this is in relation to relationship skills, interpersonal skills, then you're robbing yourself of so many opportunities by not being willing to fail, by not being willing to take risks.
No, and I can say that for myself. And something we mention every episode, but let me just kind of mention it again, is that there's a difference between shyness and introversion.
Yeah.
And introversion is the need for less social stimulus, and shyness is the fear of judgment. And believe it or not, extroverts suffer a lot from shyness in certain situations. Yeah. And each individual, it's different where they suffer from that. But I'm more extroverted than I am introverted. And many people who know me associate me with a fairly confident, especially socially confident individual. But when it comes to my dating and romantic life, I've faced a lot of challenges because of different cultural expectations, different... basically, let's face it, there is sometimes this narrative that we hear a lot about men, all they want is sex, men are this, men are that, and men do this. And there's a lot of criticism targeted towards men, for example, which in many cases is valid feedback, valid conversations, but because they are done as blanket statements, there are people like me that naturally are very cautious about their impacts on other people. And I basically stopped approaching girls as a whole for a period of my life. For multiple years, I didn't want to express interest, romantic interest, sexual interest, anything like that, with the fear of offending. I wanted to be total gentleman, and I wanted to be so respectful that I friend-zoned myself all the time. I basically rejected myself to avoid the risk of being rejected, because I wanted to avoid the risk of offending someone.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are surprised to hear that I had so many insecurities and so many challenges in that area, because they see me walk into a room and have certain leadership and communication skills that when they hear, what? I've gone through all kinds of different challenges in my romantic life that people wouldn't fathom.
Yeah.
I mean, I went 4 years without sex in my 20s due to fears. I friend-zoned every single girl that expressed interest in me during a certain period of time. I mean, I remember even having a naked girl on my bed and being like, I'm not going to be like all the other guys. I'm going to be respectful, so I'm going to give her a massage. And what I didn't realize is I actually rejected her and made her feel bad when really I was trying to be the good guy and prove that not all guys are the same.
Yeah.
Right? So, and this is why it's so important to contextualize things, why it's so important to really understand what feedback we need, what processes we need, and what fears we need to work on, right?
Yeah.
Because I took a lot of blanket statements and I applied them to my life.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why with development, I've been so adamant on not doing one-size-fits-all things, avoiding blanket statements as much as possible, contextualizing everything, because this is the feedback. The feedback I need to hear, the processes I need to go through are very different than other people.
Yeah.
And extroverts can have shyness as well.
Yeah.
Extroverts can have fear of rejection, fear of failure, imposter syndrome as well.
Yeah.
And
and you know, to sort of add to what you were saying, introverts aren't necessarily shy, and we see how introverts interact with the world.
Yeah.
And externally, in a lot of public settings, yes, they're going to speak up less. Yes, they're going to engage less socially. Yes, they're going to take less social risks a lot of time. But I, for example, being an introvert, I've had a lot of really, really great interpersonal relationships, including romantic relationships, because there were one-on-one situations where I could learn about the other person, where I could get context for things, where I could develop a certain level of trust, a certain level of safety with the other person. And so I wasn't shy in those environments. Yeah. I felt comfortable. I felt like I could be myself, and it was very positive experiences. But in a group, I'll be thinking a lot more before I act. I'll think a lot more before I speak, because there's so many different people, some that I know, some that I don't know. I don't know what their opinions are. I don't know what their feelings are. I don't know what they're going through right now. I don't know what the potential reaction could be. So it's a very different situation. And that's not necessarily shyness. Like, it can definitely cross that line, and it can become exaggerated from the point of insecurities. But to a certain degree, introverts will naturally go through that process of just reflecting on different situations and thinking before they take a lot of decisions.
Introverts, they think and analyze a lot more before they act. Extroverts, they think out loud, meaning they share every thought they have, especially if they're very extroverted. And that's why sometimes underdeveloped ideas get shared. Steve behind the scenes says, hey! And sometimes extroverts, they act so impulsively that they kind of might punish themselves after the consequences instead of putting the brakes before. So sometimes, this is not always, because introverts and extroverts, they're both equally good at putting the brake and paralyzing themselves. But extroverts, because of their instinct, sometimes their need for social stimulus, their need for adventure, the need for certain things is so strong that they'll put themselves in maybe uncomfortable situations that might be suboptimal, and then afterwards it's almost like a hangover effect. Whereas introverts in those moments are probably going to be better at saying no or
pulling away
or stopping themselves before taking an action that might be suboptimal. So we all have different processes, and that's something we have to understand. But we have to be careful to not think, ooh, I want to be more extroverted. I hear that a lot. I mean, working with personality psychology, personality theory in many different contexts here at Develop Your Element, you guys can't imagine the amount of people who have been like, I'm very introverted, but I want to change that. I want to become more extroverted.
Yeah.
That's not a good idea. You want to overcome your shyness.
Yeah.
You want to overcome your fears and insecurities. You want to learn to recharge your social battery, to have the flexibility to be social in those key moments and have the impact of an extrovert in those moments, but you don't want to lose yourself, and you want to see all the value that there is in being an introvert, because trust me, as an extrovert, primarily, there are many introverted skill sets that I wish came to me easier, that I need to work much harder on.
And that's a really important point, because each one of us has our own experiences and our own context from which we have our insecurities. So a lot of introverts will feel insecure about being introverted. They'll feel insecure about not being the life of the party, not having the energy to stay the whole duration of a party, not having the energy to engage as much, always be part of the family, things like that. But extroverts will feel often dumb. Like, it's a really common thing for extroverts to feel that they're stupid, that they're not smart, because sitting down, reading, following directions step by step, first do this, then this, then this, then this on your homework, they might have gotten excited. They saw a few words and they're like, oh, I have this idea, I'm going to do it. And they might have done it really well, but it might not have lived up to all the little requirements that were specified. And then they get a bad grade, or they get reprimanded by the teachers, by their parents, and so on. And so they live their lives feeling that they're stupid.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had that struggle myself. I mean, I was not a great academic. Like, when it came to academia, when it came to the school system, I was not the best student. And obviously our father is a professor, an Ivy League educated professor who's been educated at Penn and at Princeton. So I mean, really high bar there. In our house, our parents had over 6,000 books, and I think that's a conservative number.
Oh yeah, by now
it's that's the last time they counted. My sister has a history of being a straight A student. And so I felt like the outcast in the family. I felt like a failure in the family. And I've always had more of an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always kind of gotten through life through more emotional intelligence than traditional IQ and kind of traditional types of intelligence. And but I didn't kind of embrace that emotional intelligence for many years. I judged myself for not having better grades in school or having an easier time focusing on projects or completing projects. I was very inconsistent. If there's a project that I got passionate about, I would do it better than anyone. I remember one time delivering in Denmark a 70-page essay handwritten that basically turned into a book where I covered all the different primates in the world, had an analysis about old world and new world. This was pre-Google. Google. I mean, this was Alta Vista, maybe Yahoo, I don't remember. And a lot of encyclopedias, both online and offline, scanning images and trying to get images for as many. I basically in that moment created the most comprehensive directory of primates that there was that I could based on compiling all the information. And it was a crazy project. And that was because I got very passionate about it. And everyone else handed in one handwritten page
as per directions.
And I delivered here's a 70-page book, double-sided, front page cover, back cover, the whole shebang. I mean, I really went above and beyond. And I think some of my teachers were able to kind of see that and be like, wow, that's kind of cool. But a lot of my teachers, the inconsistency they didn't appreciate, because I mean, if I really got passionate, I did it better than anyone. But if I didn't get passionate about it, I just didn't have the focus. And that's something we talk about when we talk about personality theory. Different personalities have different processes, and it's easier or more difficult for them to do certain things. But when they have passion for something, they get double battery. Meaning double flexibility to step out of the comfort zone, right? So when I've been passionate about something, I've been able to do more introverted tasks than when it's been kind of forced on me. And the same can be said about introverts. I mean, how many introverts go to Comic-Con every year because of raw passion? They might not enjoy an expo that chaotic about something they have no interest in. Let's say a pharmaceutical conference with that amount of chaos. That probably would drain them and stress them out. But because there's so much passion and interest, introverts can thrive in extroverted environments based on their passion projects, right?
Recently we were in LA and I went to an event called Emo Night, which is basically like
not LA, Las Vegas.
Oh, Las Vegas. Sorry. And it was basically like a club type environment, like a small club type environment with a DJ and everything, but it was emo music. And you know, a lot of emo fans are more introverted. Some of them also are a lot more shy. But everybody just bonded over this shared passion. They were expressive. They were singing along. They were talking to each other. They were bonding. And you could tell, before the music started, everyone was a little bit more quiet, more reserved, keeping to themselves. But once they got into the music, they were bonding over this shared passion. So the story you brought up a moment ago kind of reminded me of an exercise that we do in some classes where we talk about measures of value, because it's very common for us to have very specific measures of value for ourselves. Like, if I achieve this, I have value. If I can do this, I have value. And a lot of it is based on what we were taught by other people. A lot of it is based on what's difficult for us, so we admire it in other people. So one exercise that we do with people is, okay, make a list of all those measures of value. Like, what do you have to be or do to feel that you're a valuable person, to feel confident about yourself? And then when you have that list, first look at how many of those aren't yours. How many of those are your parents or your grandparents or your societies or your teachers or your ex and things like that? And then with what's left, at like how much of that do you feel you are?
Mm-hmm.
The ones you don't feel you are, why? And can you think of a thing you've done recently that does actually live up to it? Like I'll hear a lot of people say, I'm not creative because they don't paint or because they don't sing or because they don't knit. And they're super creative people in terms of creative thinking process. They come up with creative solutions, creative ideas for things. So look at that list and go, okay, am I not giving myself credit for some of these? Am I not acknowledging that I am a lot of these? And then add to the list, what else are you that's valuable?
And I think that's an important thing, adding and diversifying that list, because there are many things we do every day that we don't celebrate, that we don't see enough value in, because what happens is many times we, as you said, when something is difficult for us, we give it more value. So, for example, with my sister, her being able to do more academia stuff, I made that very important. I was like, I made it important, but I failed miserably, so my self-worth went down. But it wasn't really that important for me. It was important for me because my dad is an academic, and I mean, his route to success and his exit from shyness was through mastery of his field, his topic in the area of academia, right? So he taught me that to overcome shyness, you can do it through mastery, which is very valid, and especially for introverts, mastery of a topic gives them the confidence to be able to tackle any unknown, right? Or any surprise question, or their process of being challenged. The more they master a topic, the more confident they are, and the more able they are to speak about that, especially publicly. But that wasn't really my personal goal. I had to figure out, what does Jannik want? What goals does he have? And what are things that I consider being successful? And for example, I'm a college dropout. And to this day, sometimes I wonder, should I have stayed more in school, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is, most of the people I personally admire, most of the people that I would like to trade lives with, like, I don't say it because, I want to exit my life, but I have this general idea that I'm going to try to learn more from the people who have figured something out that I haven't figured out yet, right? And most of those people are college dropouts. I mean, there are many, many entrepreneurs that are college dropouts. And I don't want to go to an extreme and be like, yo, school is bad, don't waste your money. I understand that right now in the US, it might not be the best investment for a lot of people because it's overpriced and there are a lot of people going in debt and things like that. But there's some people that, like my father, they find mastery of a topic, and then they get unlocked and they get to network, and that's their route, and it's a very valid route. But it wasn't my route, right? And that's something that when we talk about measures of value and success, we have to filter the noise of what's not ours and figure out what are ours, even if they're controversial, even if they go against the grain. What is a measure of value of success for me? And the more diverse it is, the more flexible it is. Because what happens is, for example, if you're in a military family and you've been kind of told your whole life that you have to become military, and you don't make it into the military because of a leg problem or knee problem or back problem, then you're going to feel like an absolute failure. Or like me, if you're told your whole life that academia is the way to success and you don't really make it in academia, then you're going to feel like a failure. But if you have measures of success based on things you do every single day, like being socially, for example, for me, socially capable, being ethical, being generous, inclusive, being a hard worker, blah, blah, blah. I mean, find things you're naturally doing every day and add those to a list of measures of success, and realize that you're already successful for doing things you're already doing. Even things that are easy for you. I've mentioned this in other podcasts, but like, for example, I repair computers and cell phones and things because since I was a baby, I had computers. I mean, I had my first full-blown real computer at 3. And I grew up tearing them apart, fixing them, modifying them, breaking them, making them do things they're not supposed to do, and such. So I became very technical from a young age. I mean, I learned to build websites at 10, and things like that. So there are many different technical things that I kind of take for granted now. That I remember for many years I would get upset with my friends if they took their computers to get repaired at a repair shop. And now with cell phones too, I've gotten sometimes upset. And what I've learned is, for them it's almost impossible, or for them they have no idea where to start. For them it's worth the money for them. It's worth the time for them. They're willing to invest in those services because they are receiving a solution.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, but that's so easy. Why would you pay for it?
Yeah.
Right? So we have to stop devaluing the things we do daily and the skill sets we have, because I think most people are good at devaluing themselves.
Yeah.
Most people are good at being like, I have this skill set, but it's nothing. It's not that valuable. I mean, anyone can do it. And really reflecting on, really, can anyone do it? And ask yourself, who else can do this like I can?
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, in my circle, who can do, like, let's take the computer repairs and software repairs. There are some people who can do a lot of things, but there are not many that have my skill set, for example.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so if they don't have that context, then this has a lot of value for them.
Mm-hmm.
But because I have this context, I don't see as much value in it.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to look at it from an external point of view.
Yeah.
And that's where a moment ago we said, find what's yours.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're saying, also look at it externally. Which sound like two different processes, which they are, but they're two different goals.
Yeah.
So one thing is figure out what is all the noise and things that you don't really that you aren't passionate about, that aren't your goals, and filter that away and look inward.
Mm-hmm.
But then when it comes to skill sets in particular, look from the outside of how other people are going to perceive them, so that you don't make less of your skill sets.
Yeah, and once in a while reflect on the compliments you've received from people, because we're so good at deflecting compliments and saying, oh no, it's not that big of a deal. Oh no, it's nothing. Oh no, anyone can do it, exactly as you were talking about. But take a moment to reflect on it, and you've probably been complimented a lot of times and not really received it, not really valued it, and many times we'll just be so focused on the things we're not doing, or that we feel we're not doing, that we feel we're not achieving, that we take value away from all the things that we are. So yes, and I want to add a little emphasis on the whole diversifying thing. Put things on the list that don't necessarily have financial value, or that you don't think have financial value, because it's so easy to be like, oh well, the things I can do that have financial value, that I could possibly get a job of, or job doing, are these three things, or this one thing, or like this thing that I do halfway. But all these other things, like, are you funny? Not everybody finds it easy to be funny and to make jokes.
No.
I know that I myself, I have two modes. Either it's like super quick and easy and I don't even think about it, or I'm like, what's a joke? How do I joke? How do people joke? How does this work, So things like that you think are just sort of not things with intrinsic value, but they have value. They have social value. They have enriching your life value. They have the value of creating, you as a whole dynamic human being.
And a lot of things that we don't think have financial value
They
actually
do.
have a lot of financial value.
Yeah.
I would argue that, this is not even just an argument. There are studies that prove that emotional intelligence affects much more your income and your leadership skills and your influence than any skill set, any experience, any kind of traditional thing we associate. Technical skills. Thank you. Specifically technical skills that they mention in this kind of the main study, but there are multiple studies that kind of prove this. And many of the things that we associate with emotional intelligence are just day-to-day things of how we respond to social situations, how we connect with people, how we manage our insecurities, how we communicate, how we deal with difficult moments, right? And these are things we just do sometimes naturally, subconsciously, and that we can't be like, oh, I have this 3-year degree or this 4-year degree, or I have this experience or this on my resume, or this I have achieved this specific thing or created this specific thing. No, there are certain things that naturally make us get higher paying jobs, maybe sell more, maybe create more strategic alliances, maybe recruit with more ease, maybe instill more productivity or inspire more productivity with your colleagues or with your employees, and things that we don't really celebrate enough because, it's just part of who I am, right? So when we talk about insecurities, there are many different kind of areas of insecurities. There's kind of romantic insecurities, there's professional insecurities, there is insecurities about our abilities, about our looks, about all kinds of different things, right? And we mentioned at the beginning, the first thing you have to do is kind of make your goal more important than your fear, and the other thing you have to do is embrace failure, embrace rejection, and see it as a part of the learning process, and define a skill that you want to kind of work on. But it's really important that when we explore certain types of insecurities, that we also focus on understanding that this world is so diverse. There's space for a lot of different approaches to things, and different lifestyles, and we have to basically reflect and be like, okay, so this my way of being, or my ideal stimulus, or my goals might kind of go against kind of societal standards right now. But there's, in every country, in every culture, in every country and every culture, there are going to be sub-communities. There are going to be people who have similar interests to you, similar goals to you. And sure, you can also explore the world and explore your country and find other areas that might kind of instill more what you're looking for. But there's a lot of societal noise. And in developed development, we talk about 3 different states of our personality. We talk about the biological state. That's the most natural. That's how we're wired and how we respond naturally to stimulus, to different situations, what our basic instincts are. And then we have the societal state, is how we adapt to our culture, society, family, friends, work, corporate culture, relationships, how we adapt to the expectations, the judgments, the guidelines, the education that we receive, right? And then finally, we have what is the passion project state. It's how we double our battery by exploring the things that really make us passionate. And how that gives us flexibility to step out of our comfort zone. So we're not just one thing, we step into different roles in different moments. And we talk about how we want to use our biological personality as space as much as possible. And we want to explore how in the societal state, sometimes adapting to certain moments and situations, it's a generous act. We don't want to go to the extreme. Sometimes personal development, there's this idea that you have to choose just for you, create just for you, and you put yourself first to an extreme where you get stuck in the self-empowerment and you kind of don't connect with people, right? So while yes, we talk about first recharge your battery, first work on your insecurities, first work on you to be the best version of you, to connect with other people, and then focus on bringing out the best in other people. So yes, we do talk about that, but that's just it's a starting point, right? We don't want to get stuck in that moment of, oh, I'm just focusing on me, right? We want to filter out the noise when it comes to the societal stuff, and don't dismiss it fully. Don't be like, oh, societal and cultural guidelines are the worst and we don't want anything to do with it. No, there's some that don't work for us. There's some that require more work for us, and there's some that we certainly should ignore or override and empower ourselves enough to not submit to certain things that really don't work for us. But there's some certain guidelines that are based on certain level of compassion and respect, that in certain moments, it's okay. In this moment, I will act in a way that is more respectful and kind, or collaborative, especially when you have different personalities, showing flexibility in relationships. Sometimes being able to say, you know what, let's go with your idea, right? It's powerful. It's powerful. So with societal stuff, it's really that. Be like, okay, this really doesn't work for me. This can be an act of kindness, an act of collaboration. And I'm willing to develop this skill set, even though it's hard. And also, when we talk about, this will be a whole other episode, but we talk about this idea of interconnected goals, right? Where we want to make long-term goals and short-term goals, because we want to have somewhere to go to. But if we don't have short-term goals that help us guide us in the meanwhile, we can get lost putting out fires and fixing everything and getting distracted with kind of how our family and friends pull us in other directions. And we kind of might lose track of the mark or the goal. And the other thing that can happen is if you don't have smaller kind of stepping stones that you celebrate, you won't have the energy to reach the final goal, because one of the things that most negatively affects our well-being is feeling stuck, right? So it's very important that we design our goals in a way that we don't feel stuck, that even though something requires patience and takes a long time to get there, we will celebrate the small successes on the way there, right? So we talk about this idea of interconnected goals, to sometimes understand that we sometimes have to go through uncomfortable periods to get to comfortable periods. We sometimes have to go through challenges where we might feel like, oh, this is not really me, or this is not really ideal. But maybe if we use regenerative spaces that we talk about in other programs, you know, finding the activities that recharge our batteries and give us that kind of flexibility and resilience, maybe we can go through a period that might be a little bit more difficult to reach where we want to get, right? So, for example, I wasn't a great academic, but I at least had to get to, like, past high school, right? Like, I had certain values that for me, and those were mine. I mean, I had to get into some type of college. Whether or not I succeeded in college, that was a different story. But which meant that there were periods I had to go through difficult times. And being like, going to the extreme of being like, no, that's not for me, school is not for me, and dropping out like too early, I would not have been happy with that, right? So there's certainly sometimes where we have to go through periods that are kind of more difficult, but being like, okay, this will help me get to where I want to be, and then in this moment I'll have maybe certain power, flexibility, or the life I want and things like that, and this kind of is my goal. But maybe in the process, I need certain agility, right? And when it comes to insecurities, it's very easy to be like, oh, no, that's not for me, or no, that's too scary, or no, and shut down and not even get remotely close to the goals, right? So it is very important that we don't come up with this general idea that, ooh, just embrace your goals and scrap everything else. Like, we have to be realistic.
And it is a process, and you have to be willing to go through that process. You know, if you're learning a language, you're not going to become fluent overnight. But if you have the short-term goals of, hey, I want to learn how to introduce myself in this language. Maybe you don't understand what the other person says back to you, but you successfully introduced yourself, you know? And then next step, you want to be able to say, who are your family members? You know, basic things like that sort of tend to be typical short-term goals along the way when you're learning a language. It's the same when overcoming your insecurities. You know, sometimes dealing with your insecurities means giving yourself a break and not looking at it for a little bit so you can recover, so you can relax, so you can find, you know, find yourself in things that you do feel confident about, do things that you do feel good about. And then maybe you just didn't Google things for like 5 minutes or 5 hours, like, hey, I don't understand technology. I don't feel comfortable with it. I kind of panic when I have to touch a computer. I'm going to Google things or YouTube videos or ask a friend who's good at technology, like, hey, how do I do this? Or how does this work? Or, you know, I wonder if you can do this. You know, just Google, can you blah, blah, blah? How do you blah, blah, blah? Being willing to take those steps of finding something out. And, you know, maybe you don't learn to fix and tear apart and put back together computers overnight, but You learn how to do some cool tricks, how to do some cool shortcuts for something, and then you feel good about yourself because you're like, ooh, I'm doing Control C and things like that.
I think there's something very important in desensitizing yourself to rejection and failure. And this is a whole trend on YouTube. If you search the rejection challenge, they even turn it into like a game, right? Where people go up to people and get rejected. There are videos of people going up to a couple and being like, I like your wife, can I have her? Or I like your shirt, shall we trade? And like say the most ridiculous things seeking rejection, right? And the funny thing is, many times because they do it with such lighthearted humor, instead of being rejected, it turns into a laugh and they get accepted, right? Yeah. So obviously the cases on YouTube are not the best case scenario because it's for show, it's for entertainment, it's for laughs, it's to get reactions, it's to get views, likes, comments, whatever. But if you kind of look at it this way, okay, let's say you are paralyzed in your dating game and you tell yourself, okay, today I'm going to go to a nightclub and I'm going to go talk to or I'm going to try to get rejected 10 times by a girl. Trust me, it's very unlikely you get rejected 10 times by a girl. Rejection. Because what happens? Your body language changes when you are seeking rejection. They're going to look at you and they're going to be like, that's a confident individual. He's not afraid of being rejected. He has value. Ooh, okay, interesting. Suddenly they become more attractive. The same person. If a person comes in with like body language of I'm sorry to interrupt, or if they come in with like body language that shows confidence, there's a big difference. And it's funny how many people we've kind of told them go out and do that, and how surprised they've been. We have a client in Brazil that has taken several workshops, and she took a relationship workshop, and when she joined the workshop, she wasn't able to look at a guy. She wasn't able to talk to a guy. She wasn't able to express interest in a guy. If her dating life totally involved basically guys going to her, but she couldn't take the first step. And we did a lot of role plays, a lot of different things, and really challenged her to get out of her comfort zone. And she was basically crying, like she was shaking, and with these role plays, trying to show interest in a guy during the workshop. And but after that, she went to a Christmas party, and with the tools of development, she was like, oh, that guy is this personality, so I'm going to come with this body language and this approach, because obviously we tailor things to personalities. So, oh, this guy is an extrovert, he's electric, full of energy, so I'm going to go and have lots of fun, I'm going to dance and joke around. And she made out with him. Oh, that guy, he's fiery, he's like very well dressed, very good impact, so I'm going to go up and compliment his outfit and kind of praise him a bit. She went up and did that, and they started making out. She saw a more introverted guy, a metallic guy, and she's like, that guy, he needs a little bit more kind of time to process things, analyze things, so I'm going to use eye contact, and I'm going to prepare him mentally, and then I'm going to approach. And she did it. They made out. And there was a story of like, I think she made out with 4 guys and danced with like 4 guys or something like that in one night after not being able to approach a guy.
Yeah.
And that's because she started desensitizing herself to those fears. And she started realizing that if she gave more importance to her goal instead of her fears, and she started kind of seeking rejection instead of seeking approval, she would get approval, right?
Yeah.
And so it's been very interesting seeing how her life has transformed, and other people in that group, because sometimes when I've been in Brazil, I've gone out to nightclubs with kind of a group that's been in that workshop, and they start playing that game. Okay, let's do the rejection challenge. And it's like, wow, okay, the contrast is insane, right?
Yeah.
And that's something important. If you see it as a skill set, okay, I'm going to develop this skill.
Yeah.
I'm going to put myself in a very uncomfortable situation. And it doesn't have to be romantic. I mean, we've also gotten a lot of clients to do it with business. Try to get rejected 10 times with sales pitches, because a lot of people, especially like with online businesses and things like that, are very good at hiding, right?
Yeah.
And like, if you challenge yourself, I'm going to get rejected 10 times today with a sales pitch, you're going to have to talk to more people. and present to more people, and you're going to get more sales.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so seeking rejection and not letting rejection become fatal, not letting rejection become personal, because what happens many times, we turn rejection into something fatal.
Mm-hmm.
We turn a small little rejection into a knockout, and we tap out. We have full control on how rejection influences us. Only we decide whether it hurts us a little or it hurts us a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to amplify the pain associated with rejection.
Yeah, and the immediate response is not the one that you have to really judge yourself for or police, so to speak, because of course initially, yes, it's extremely uncomfortable. So allow yourself to be upset, allow yourself to be confused about what happened, allow yourself that initial moment of shock and uncomfortableness and difficulty, but it's the next step that you take where you have control of how you do this. You know, you're like, okay, do I want to do a different strategy next time? Do I want to try with a different type of person next time? Do I want to be in a different environment next time? Do I want to be in a different mental state the next time? You know, you can start looking at, okay, is there something I can change and implement that'll make the outcome different? And try it. Allow yourself the process. If you're looking for rejection 10 times, even if you get that rejection 10 times, there are probably going to be times where you don't get rejected, and you might learn something from that. Like, oh, hey, like, I get along really well with this type of person, and I didn't think I would. Or, hey, saying it in this way is something that people really respond really well to. Approaching it this way is something people respond really well to. So you're going to automatically learn a lot during that process if you allow yourself to go through that process.
Yeah, I mean, it's we are our own worst enemies.
Yeah.
It's very easy to blame other people. We can blame the economy, we can blame our parents, we can blame our culture, we can blame anyone we want for, and we have other exercises where we kind of talk about internal and external barriers. And what we sometimes do is we ask people to kind of write down all their external barriers, things that they feel are out of their control, things that they feel that are not their responsibility or not because of them, right? And then we challenge them to analyze deeper and be like, okay, these things that you have labeled as external barriers, how many of those are really at the core an insecurity or a limiting mindset or something that you actually have control of? So yes, while you cannot control everyone else around you and your whole culture and environment, blah, 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 what you can do is you can change how you let that affect you.
Yeah.
And many times people realize, oh, I was blaming our culture, our society, our economy, my family, my this, my that. But really, it was my fear of rejection that had me paralyzed. Or really, it was my fear of failure. So it's easier to blame them than expose myself to the risk of failure. Or it was my fear of success because I was afraid of whether I could maintain that success.
Yeah.
Or I was feeling as an imposter, and I decided not to explore it, and it was easier to blame others than really realize it was my own imposter syndrome that affected me. And so we also have to take responsibility, take control of our lives, and be like, this I want to change, this I can directly influence.
And what you said, you mentioned fear of success, and I think that has to be talked about a little bit more, because it's very easy to go, oh yes, I have fear of rejection. Oh yes, I have fear of failure. Oh yes, I have fear of bad things happening to me. That makes sense. We can comfort ourselves and justify those fears to ourselves. But fear of success, we don't always want to look at because we can't justify it. But it's very common. It's very common to be afraid of success because maybe I don't like the attention. For me as an introvert, I know that being in the public eye is not the most comfortable and natural thing for me because I like having a certain level of privacy and anonymity. You know, maybe I fear that if I have that level of success, I'll be lonely at the top. Maybe I fear that if I have that level of success, losing everything all of a sudden will be more painful than never having it in the first place. You know, a lot of us are afraid of good things happening because we're afraid of negative consequences as a result. So we will auto-sabotage ourselves. We will hold ourselves back. We will create conflicts where there don't have to be conflicts just to not advance, just to not put ourselves in that position where we actually achieve our goals, where we actually feel comfortable with ourselves, with our lives, where we're actually happy. There's some cultures where they have sayings and idioms about, if you laugh, you'll cry tomorrow, or if a good thing happens today, a bad thing will happen tomorrow. There are different versions of it in different cultures, but it's something a lot of us believe in at some level. It's like, okay, if I'm too happy now, it'll be so much more painful to lose it later, so I'm just going to not be happy.
Yeah, and that leads me to another one. In Denmark, it's called the Jantelov. In Australia, their version is called the tall puppy syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
In Japan, their version is called the nail that sticks out, needs to be hammered in. In many cultures, there's this idea that you cannot stand out.
Yeah.
That you cannot shine because you'll make other people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That you're not you're not allowed to brag. You're not allowed to celebrate your successes because then you're an arrogant prick.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, there is such a thing as being an arrogant prick.
Yeah.
But many times, it would be more positive for you to celebrate your success and even brag, but in a kind, inclusive way, than stopping the celebration of your achievements.
Yeah.
I lived many years in Denmark, and in Denmark, there's so much this idea that everyone has to be kind of equal, no one can be better than anyone else, and blah, 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 to the degree that whenever I did something outstanding, my teachers wouldn't celebrate me because they felt that, other people are going to feel uncomfortable. So I learned to just be lazy in school because I realized that it didn't matter if I put 2 minutes or 20 hours into a project, the outcome was the same.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to hurt other people's feelings.
Yeah. And they'll even sometimes punish you for success. It happened to me that there was a yearly art competition that I would participate in every year, and I won a few years in a row. And one year, it was just, I won by so many points, by so many votes, because people would come and vote on their favorite. I've won by so many votes that they actually took me out of the competition, disqualified me, and took away my prize to give others a chance, because other people will feel bad. So yes, a lot of us in different ways have been exposed to that kind of mentality where it's not celebrated to be good. It's not celebrated to have success because, you make other people look bad. Your brother will look bad if you're too good at this. Your cousins will look bad if you do this. Your classmates will look bad if you do this. So we're taught to be extra modest.
Yeah, it's a false modesty. I mean, I learned false modesty.
Mm-hmm.
I learned to always put myself down, to self-deprecating humor, to insult myself before I could brag, because if not, I didn't have the right to brag.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fiery personality. I'm a personality that is results-driven, productivity-driven, impact-driven. I like being a leader. I like influencing people. I like having an impact on this world.
Yeah.
And the reality is I was taught to shut up, because if I bragged about my achievements, I was insulting people. I was hurting people. So I shut down.
Yeah.
And I let my other personality take over, my earthly side, the more diplomatic, kind, compassionate, blah, 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 blah. But I'm saying blah, 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 blah right now from frustration, from shutting down one side of me. Trust me, I love my earthly side, and every personality has a lot of value. And my earthly side is amazing at many different things. But my fire has a lot of value that I did not embrace.
Yeah.
And when we talk about personality psychology, many times there are character traits that we have that we get rejected for when we miscalculated by being insecure, by being drained, and then we reject that whole side of our personality and try to suppress it. And the more we suppress it, the more we get lost.
Yeah.
And the more we drain the other sides of personality. So we should never, ever, ever totally shut down part of us.
Yeah.
But we should learn how we can navigate our mix of personalities and be like, okay, this side of me needs to celebrate achievements. This side of me needs to brag sometimes. But let me do it in a confident, inclusive, kind way that uplifts people and inspires people instead of a way that makes people feel like less.
Yeah.
And you can take almost any character trait and you can use it in a positive, inspiring way that builds bridges, connects with people, or you can use it in a way that builds that burns bridges and deteriorates relationships.
Yeah.
The same little character trait. There's a very fine line between confidence that inspires and arrogance that is distasteful. Mm-hmm. There's a very small fine line between being emotionally expressive in a kind, compassionate, connected way and going to the extreme of being emotionally dramatic and unstable. Right? There's a very fine line between helping people and generating codependencies and overprotecting people. There's a very fine line between organizing things for optimizing things and overstructuring things due to fear of kind of failure and stuff, right? They're more, you can take almost any character trait, any process, and you can tweak it so that it is very productive and positive or destructive. And when we get rejected or told that part of our personality is wrong, because maybe when we are drained and insecure, it comes across as wrong, when we are our worst version, if we're taught that blanket statement that that's wrong, then we suppress ourselves. And that's dangerous. Because my fiery side, it has taken me years to rebuild the confidence to be the leader I need to be to achieve the things I want to achieve. Because in school in Denmark, I was taught that I couldn't brag and I couldn't celebrate my achievements because some insecure people around me maybe have kind of cut me into pieces when I was at my peak. And I learned to accept and embrace a suboptimal version of me because I felt that that was friendlier.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, and really these are things that we have to be willing to look at, because oftentimes in that process of suppressing a part of our personality, we convince ourselves that we're not that.
Yeah.
We convince ourselves, oh, no, that's a bad thing. That hurts people, or that's not responsible, or that's not the way to success, or that's not something. It doesn't have some value. It has some negative aspect to it. So I'm not that. I'm not going to be that. And a lot of people have come to develop your element and taken a lot of these workshops where we talk about the different personalities. We talk about the value that each of these personalities has. We talk about how we're a mix of everything. We talk about how our insecurities can lead us to either suppress it or express it in negative ways, things like that. And, you know, people might be around for a while and then all of a sudden be like, oh, I have this personality that I thought I didn't, that I have conflicts with, that I didn't like when I arrived here. I thought these people were the most annoying or the most frustrating or the most difficult to deal with. I didn't like them. I didn't understand them. I didn't know what to do with them. But actually, I'm like that. But I was shut down. I was rejected in such a harsh way or in such a repetitive way that I disconnected myself from that completely. And this is a whole part of my being, a whole part of who I am, something that enriches my life, something that fills me with energy when I allow it, when I express it in a positive way, that I haven't been willing to see. And I've been even having conflicts with other people as a result. I've even been judging other people as a result. I've even been projecting these insecurities and rejections I've received onto others as a result of these events. So we have to be willing to allow ourselves room to be surprised, because it happens. It happens that we think, oh, these are the types of people I definitely can't get along with, that I definitely don't understand. And then we realize, in my other relationships, I'm that person.
No, I mean, when it comes to fears and insecurities, there's so many things that we really should explore. And it's all about self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Self-awareness and also empathy. Yeah. Understanding others. But yes, many times we shut down in ourselves things we have seen in other people done in a negative way. Yeah. I mean, if you have had an ex-partner or a parent or a teacher that showed a character trait and used it in a negative way, then we reject ourselves if we see certain tendencies of that just kind of have slight similarity. But another thing we have to talk about is when we start new relationships, whether it be a business relationship, a romantic relationship, set realistic expectations and honest expectations from the beginning. Don't try to be something you're not as a base. Like in key moments, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to step into what's required. You have to be able to adapt your body language, intensity, vocabulary, approach. You have to be flexible in many moments. But as a base, you have to be like, from the get-go, this is who I am, take it or leave it. And that requires a lot of confidence. I realize that. But if you come into a relationship and you set the expectation that you're totally different than what you are to please the other person and not to be rejected by the other person, what happens?
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. You can't sustain it.
No. Eventually you reach that point where who you really are starts coming out, and the other person says, hey, this is not what I signed up for. You're not the person that I met. You're not the person that I fell in love with. We drain ourselves along the way. And even if there were things that were true, even if there were things that were genuine from the beginning, we simply put a standard for ourselves that we couldn't maintain, drain ourselves in the process, had conflicts along the way in the process, and then we're like, how come you don't respect me for who I am? And they're saying, how come you're not the person I thought you was?
And that's an important point. That, like, when you try to sustain something that's not genuine as a base, as a standard, it's gonna drain your energy levels and stress you out, because when you are step outside of your comfort zone, when you act in a way that's outside of your biology, imagine an introvert going on stage or in front of thousands of people, or an extrovert trying to sit still all day and be quiet in class. They can do it, but their heart rate increases, the muscles get tenser, they start sweating more, it's more stress, right? So when we step out of our comfort zone in key moments, a bit of stress can actually be possible. They're positive. There are different types of stress, and that's a whole other conversation, but a bit of stress in key moments can be positive. But chronic stress is unhealthy. And if you get into a relationship where you generate an expectation that basically puts you in a position where you are under constant chronic stress, then you're going to drain yourself so much that after a few days, a few weeks, a few years, it depends on many factors, you're going to get so drained that one day your genuine personality is going to kick in, but it's going to kick in its worst version, in its most drained and insecure and lost version, and it's going to be more aggressive, it's going to be more explosive, or depending on your personality, or more destructive. It's not going to be the best version of you. So yes, there's going to be a sudden rejection of you, of, oh, you've changed, who are you, what's going on? And what they really are saying is, I don't like this that I'm seeing. And it's not that they don't like you as a person. It's they don't like seeing you in a drained, insecure state. And yes, they don't like having been told one thing and being shown another thing. Because when you set an expectation and you demonstrate something else, that creates a lot of confusion and frustration as well. Because it's a lack of honesty.
Yeah, and people around you will advise you to be careful about certain things. They'll try to protect you and say, oh, don't talk about this from the beginning. You know, don't go there. Give them a moment. Let them get to know you first. But if this is a core aspect of who you are, that's part of what they need to know from the beginning. That's part of what they need to agree to from the beginning for the relationship to work. If it's a minor part of your life, then yeah, sure, you can wait and not bring it up on the first date, or in the first meeting. But if something is essential to who you are, don't suppress it for fear of rejection, because, okay, yeah, you might get rejected.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll even get rejected a lot of times by a lot of people. But if it's who you are, you're not going to be happy trying to force yourself to be something you're not. With those relationships you could have had, you're going to be much better off finding the people that go, oh, hey, that's really cool. Yeah. I like that. I'm into that.
Yeah, and there are a couple of things to keep in mind. There's the thing that there are going to be people that have such conflicting personalities and contexts and education and goals and visions that you would be forcing it. I'm not saying you couldn't have a healthy relationship, but you'd be forcing it in the sense that you're just not on the same page. Yeah. You're just going for totally different things. You just have totally different approaches to things. And while having contrasting personalities and different contexts is very valuable because it can enrich a relationship, if it's mixed with insecurities, it will deteriorate a relationship. Yeah. Because you will feel that the other person is rejecting you every time they have an opposing idea. So be aware that contrast can be very positive. It's not that, you have to find people who are exactly the same as you and blah, blah, blah. No. But when we have these kind of situations with different people with different personalities, the best thing you can do is not try to adapt yourself fully to the other person. Have moments of adaptation that are acts of generosity where you go, oh, that's so sweet. She or he adapted to me in this moment and did something that was uncomfortable for them to please me. That's nice. I mean, showing compassion and flexibility, that's beautiful. But there's also a lot of beauty in being straight up honest. And what I do now is when I kind of leave a relationship, I kind of reflect, okay, what things can I learn from this? Okay, there's certain things that I was judged and criticized for, And there's some things I can improve. I can certainly develop this skill set. I can certainly learn from this. And I don't want to like dismiss responsibility. But I also go, okay, so this thing that I was judged and criticized a lot about, that's a very core part of my being and my goals and my context.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe in the beginning of my next relationship, I'm going to just be straight up honest. And now when I start a new relationship, generally speaking, the first thing I do is I say, I'm a hard worker. Like, I'm a workaholic. I'm a businessman. I work 24/7. I have a whole team that depends on me. So my attention belongs to not just you. It belongs to all my staff, all my collaborators, all my clients. And you do not have exclusive rights to my attention.
Mm-hmm.
I also say, listen, when it comes to my personality, I have one side of me that's very compassionate, nurturing, that wants to take care of everyone. And I will take care of you, but everyone else as well. So don't get jealous. And I also have a side of me that's, well, it's very work-driven. It means that many of our dates are going to be me on the phone, or it's going to be me on the computer. And I will integrate you and include you if you want. But this is a big part of me. And maybe on the romantic dating side, there are two sides to me. There's one side of me that's going to want to spoil you, take care of you, blah, blah. But there's one side that might be more perverted and might focus more on things that to you might seem maybe superficial or whatever. But it's just part of my instinct. It might be more comfortable for me to kind of talk about perverted, more dull stuff than maybe the more emotional stuff. I might avoid emotional things for the first long part of the relationship because it's harder for me. Don't think that it's don't devalue our relationship for me taking longer time to express myself and being vulnerable, because one side of my personality has a hard time with vulnerability.
Yeah.
So what I do is I try to just be like straight up, listen, this is who I am, this is how I am, this is what you can expect from me. If you can put up with all of this, I will promise to do this, and this. And I also ask, what's important for you? What are your goals? How can I enrich your life? What can I do to contribute to your life? But I am very clear about what they can expect. So that when I do the things that I'm going to do, because I'm not going to compromise on those things, they don't reject me.
Yeah.
That they understand that I'm going to be traveling a lot. I'm going to be working a lot. I won't have time to see them every day. I'm going to be sometimes with them, but I'm going to be half there and half not there. And like, if they can embrace that, that's great. And the beautiful thing is, since I've taken that approach, most girls have been like, wow, I respect and commend your hard work, your vision, your this, your that. Whereas before it was a lot of, oh, you don't pay enough attention to me. Oh, you don't love me. Oh, you don't this, and blah, blah, blah. You don't have time for me. And there's a big contrast.
Yeah.
So sometimes just with confidence projecting who you are with the things you've been most judged about, it's very hard for someone to judge you when you've already expressed that part.
Yeah. And in that situation, even if the relationship doesn't work out, even if they're not your forever person or your for a long time person, the process and the experience is going to be so much different. Because it's not going to be a situation where they're complaining to you because you're not delivering the expectations they had from lack of communication. Okay. It'll be a much more clear and easy process of figuring out, hey, does it work or not? If yes, great. If not, okay, cool. Okay. We'll each go our own ways, and that's fine. It's not, oh, you're wrong or I'm wrong. It's, okay, we're different. Maybe we're not compatible. Maybe this didn't work out. Yeah. So cool. Good luck to you, and I'll go do my things.
Yeah, and sometimes exactly the decision is, okay, well, we're going different directions. And sometimes it's, okay, you have this context, you have these goals, you have these personalities. I have these goals, this context, this personalities. Can I ask you to do more of this? And I see more of this in the relationship, because that will enrich me and help me recharge. And then I can be more flexible and patient with you in this area. And just having an open dialogue of, this is what you need, this is what I need, you give me this, I can give this with more ease. And it's not about ultimatums. It's not of, you do this, I do this. No. It's not about a trade. I do this if you do this. No. It's saying, I need more of this in my life to recharge my battery, to have more well-being, to more flexibility, to have more patience, to be able to be more flexible, and yes, in turn, give you more of what you are seeking, because I need the fuel for this, right?
Yeah.
And it's not about an exchange as much as it's a collaboration,
Yeah.
right? And a partnership, or like it's a process of seeing how can we come to a dynamic that works for all of us. And when we talk about relationship dynamics, whether it be business or romantic or family, it's very important to have these conversations of what's important for you, what's important for me, how can we achieve it, how can we create it, because without those conversations, a lot of assumptions get made.
Yeah.
And when assumptions get made, insecurities kick in and multiply. And then we start feeling neglected, we feel ignored, and maybe we have past experiences that we are associating this experience with a past experience, and maybe it's totally different right now. But maybe, let's say someone cheated on you in a previous relationship, and then you see your partner do something that you might associate with that period of that other relationship, and you go, oh no, he's cheating on me again. Or this person is cheating on me. And they might not be, right? Yeah. But because we draw conclusions, because we might see patterns, and we have to be careful. We have to contextualize each situation. We have to investigate. We have to communicate, and we should never attack before asking questions and trying to understand the situation. Because many times people are around us that change with us. It's because they're drained. It's because they're insecure. Yeah. It's because they might not be getting something from the relationship that they're seeking. And by having a dialogue, you can solve the problem. By criticizing the other person, you'll just back them into a corner, right? So when we talk about fears and insecurities, it's not just about ourselves. It's about the people around us. Because the more fears and insecurities the people around us have, the more they're going to impose those fears and insecurities on us as well. I mean, everything is interconnected in that sense. Like, if you're insecure, you're much more likely to criticize me. If I'm insecure, I'm much more likely to criticize you. That's just basic logic. Yeah. And so it's a win-win for everyone, and it's not selfish. It's generous, because everyone is going to feel better if you work on the insecurities of other people and yourself. Like, don't just stop with yourself. Like, make sure that you uplift people around you. And yes, when we talk about uplifting people around you, don't just uplift the dramatic people that wear their insecurities on their sleeves. Also uplift and compliment and make the people who come across as super confident and in control, because many times we've seen that the most confident to the outside world are the most insecure inside. Yeah. I mean, I've mentioned this many times in the podcast. Look at Robin Williams. He committed suicide due to depression. I think the whole world sees him, or at least used to see him, as one of the happiest, most joyful, fun people in the world. Yeah. And something that happens is often the most confident-looking people are the most insecure. Sometimes they do it because of really kindness, because they want to uplift people. But many times it's a defense mechanism. I mean, look at Donald Trump. Not to get into politics, but Donald Trump, every time he gets criticized, he enforces how great he is, and he enforces how terrible the other person is. Yeah. And he forces his greatness. Yeah. Right? So we have to be aware that sometimes the people who force their greatness and or use, and different personalities are going to be different, right? Some personalities are going to use humor, some personalities are going to use authoritarian leadership styles, some people are going to escape, different people are going to use different ways of coming across as more confident and in control than they are. But the reality is, every single person in this world has insecurities. Yeah. And we have to remember that. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs, some of the most successful entrepreneurs, some of the most successful business people, some of the most successful, most admired people in this world feel like imposters. They feel that it was too easy, and one day they're going to be discovered as a fraud. And it's crazy how we, from the outside, we often look at successful people and we think that they're the most arrogant people in the world. But really, when you get to know them, many times they're the most humble people or the most insecure people, and that's just like,
I think an important skill to develop is recognizing that what people put out into the world isn't the whole picture. So that also goes for social media. A lot of us were great at looking at social media, saying, oh, this friend is getting married, this friend is so happy, this friend is celebrating this event, this friend is traveling, this friend is doing these great things. And I'm at home watching Netflix and I'm not even enjoying it anymore because I feel miserable about something. I'm tired. I'm in pain. I don't like what's going on in my life right now. I don't know how to deal with it. So we compare our behind the scenes, unabridged, unedited, uncensored version of our lives with a highlight reel of other people.
Yeah.
Also, even if we see them in person, if they're insecure about something, a lot of people won't voice it. If somebody's uncomfortable with something, a lot of times we won't voice it, and we'll try to mask, we'll try to cover, we'll try to show the good parts. I've had times in my life where I was struggling with depression, and I would sort of practice and really practice how to look happy, practice how to respond if people ask me how I was doing. And I practice, I would memorize certain key events in my life that were positive. And even if because of my depression, they weren't fulfilling me, I would memorize, this good thing happened. So the next time someone asks me how I'm doing, I'm going to tell them, I'm doing amazing. This great thing happened. Everything's so happy. Couldn't be better. And I've spent years of my life fooling people by doing that.
No, I mean, we are all great at masking our insecurities to the untrained eye.
Yeah.
I mean, when you know what to look for, it's easier to identify insecurities. And my experience is really, really that no one is exempt from insecurities.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. As I said, insecurities and fear sometimes can save our lives and help us improve and innovate. But many times it does paralyze us, and it robs us from many rich experiences. And we have to be very careful with that. So, I mean, this is a very important topic, and we can go in so many directions with it. But I think really to emphasize the important points and to kind of recap a little bit. We all have fears, even the ones that come across as they don't. We all have insecurities, even the people who come across as confident and in control. We all have been through experiences where we felt like a failure, where we felt like felt rejected, felt judged. And with any skill set that you want to learn, you're not going to be a pro in the beginning. Your first at anything will not be perfect. I mean, this podcast, how many episodes has it taken for us to get the audio and video as close to right as possible? And we are still having challenges.
Yeah.
The first many episodes, the audio was out of sync. The first couple of episodes, the cameras were out of focus. Not only that, the content, the first few episodes versus, we're always learning, and we're making mistakes, and we're listening to the feedback and trying to improve. We've had videos that have gone over time where we've miscalculated the timings, where we spend too much time on some topics and then we don't have time to wrap up properly because we run out of time because we have this episode in Spanish coming right after and things like that. And there've been many times where it's been tempting to be like, okay, let's just give up. This is not for us. I remember a couple of years ago, the first live video I did online received the worst reviews in the world. Yeah. People were harsh. People were, and rightfully so, because I wasn't as good as I am today, and I still have a long way to go. There's many areas of valid criticism that I deserve, and this is something we talk about in a lot of episodes. Learn to filter the noise when you receive criticism and you receive feedback. I mean, there's certainly an element to be said that it's important to listen to feedback, but many times criticisms and haters, hateful comments, come from their insecurities, their context. Many times advice we get is based on the advice that they needed to hear when they were our age. I have uncles who love to tell me all the things that I should be doing differently because that's what they would have liked to have done differently at my age. And many times it does not have anything to do with my personal individual context, right? So we talk about, put more importance to the people where they've figured out something that you haven't figured out and you want to learn something very specific from them. Learn from anyone, be willing to listen to anyone, but also identify who really is giving advice based on your context, your goals, your personality, your situation, and who's giving it based on their context, their goals, their personality, and filter the noise, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we absorb all this stuff, especially like with public stuff like this. I mean, we get so many opinions, so much. It's like when you're a parent for the first time, everyone will have opinions on how to be a better parent or how to raise your kids. Well, when you're an entrepreneur, everyone has ideas of how to run your business, and you have to filter a lot of the noise. And that's not to dismiss people, but it's to realize that many times people don't have the context, and that if you listen to every single piece of advice and read every single comment, it will destroy you. If you filter out the noise and try to understand, okay, what are the patterns, what are the trends, what can I learn from what I'm hearing multiple times from multiple people in different ways, okay, that's what I can work on. So we try to focus on patterns. We try to focus on learning from people who we want to learn something specific from, that might have this unlocked or figure out something that we're still working on. We try to give context to people so that people will give us better advice. We try to not dismiss people outright, but it's filter out the noise, because many times our insecurities stem from our parents, our teachers, our collaborators, our partners having different contexts, different goals, different approaches, and making us feel invalidated, right? And we have to not let that invalidate us, right? Because we all need to embrace our own context and our own goals. Desensitize yourself to fears by stepping out of your comfort zone, seeking rejection, seeking failure, and understand the more you're failing, the more you're being rejected, the more you're innovating. Of course, if you don't break certain patterns and repeat the same problems over and over again, you're not learning and growing, and that's a different issue. But like, look at Facebook. Their motto for many years has been move fast and break things. Keep innovating, take risks, break stuff. And yes, they have many scandals and many problems, but they're still the number one because they kept innovating. And all the companies in the same space that stopped innovating have lost most of their market share because they stopped innovating. So it's very important that we put ourselves in that situation where we keep innovating and allow ourselves to fail, allow ourselves to be rejected. Develop Development was born a lot from two failures. Failure for me being a good supportive brother, in the sense that I tried to make her more extroverted without having the context and knowledge of personality psychology, and also in my previous business from clashes of different personalities in terms of my co-founders had very contrasting personalities, and it led to conflicts every single day, and I needed to come with a way to solve that problem. And a lot of what we developed to solve those problems is now what has turned into Develop Development. So many times from problems, from struggles, good things can come. And yes, interconnected goals, know where you're going, so that sometimes you work on having more perseverance and more patience and resilience during difficult moments, but also so that you don't get distracted with the noise, because a lot of people around you will distract you with their problems, their issues, their insecurities, their goals. And while sometimes those distractions will enrich your life, sometimes those distractions will not enrich either of your lives, and it's just a pattern that you're repeating. So if you keep your eye on the prize, it's gonna be easier. So there's so many things we can do. Also, take responsibility, take control, don't blame others. Even though other people have certainly influence, certainly control, certainly impact, identify how you can let that affect you differently, because you have full control of how you let other people and other things affect you, and whether that paralyzes you or whether that inspires you to innovate or become more agile and find a new approach. So don't blame others, take responsibility, and yes, see how you can maybe reduce the influence other people have on you. And
and give yourself credit, like we were talking about with the different measures of success, with the different measures of value. Give yourself credit for the things that you are doing right, that you are succeeding in, that, or even just that are fun, great personality traits that you have. Maybe you have some kind of funky quirks that some people judge you for, but that you think are kind of cute, Give yourself credit for those things, and regularly remind yourself of those things, because it's so easy to get caught out in the negative side of things. And then we lose a lot of confidence. We lose a lot of our sense of who we are when we don't remind ourselves, hey, I'm good at this. I've got these things covered. I've been developing these skills. I have these traits that are great.
And ask people around you who really know you well. Ask them, what am I good at? what things do you value in me that I might not be valuing in myself?
Yeah.
Because you're your own worst enemy, and you're very good at devaluing yourself, and people around you are going to be very quick to say, this thing you do, I can't do that.
Yeah.
This thing you do, wow, I'm impressed. Wow, this thing you do, I admire. And when you want honest feedback, be patient, and because people sometimes have a hard time being good at giving honest feedback to you, good and bad. But if you really want good and bad, really prepare them and demonstrate to them that you can take both the good and the bad, because they will give you both more good and more bad. Because if they feel that you only take good, then they might
sugarcoat things.
No. Like, for example, if they feel that you only respond well to positive things, yes, they will sugarcoat things and they will not cover the bad. But also even the good, they won't show it as much, because they're going to be like, he needs his ego boosted again, and blah, blah, blah. And like, it generates, like, it's so much better when people feel that they can be honest with you without you becoming defensive or without it getting to your head. Yeah. So if you can demonstrate, because for example, with our relationship dynamic, my fiery personality for many years made you feel that you couldn't give me compliments because you felt it might go to my head, right? Yeah. So we have to understand that we have to make it clear to the people around us that they can give us both negative and positive feedback, and we'll receive it well. So we have to demonstrate that so that we get that from them. And yeah, I mean, there's so many things we need to do to stop insecurities from controlling our lives. But it starts with just making the decision to take control and to embrace the adversity, embrace the challenges, and keep the eye on the prize. I mean, that is I think the kind of most condensed way of putting it. And we all have different contexts, we all have different challenges, and they're all equally valid. And I mean, find what works for you, and define a path that works for you. Don't go to the extreme of excluding people when you create a path for you. Still connect with people, still be collaborative, and remember that everything we talk about in Develop Beyond applies both to bring out the best in you, but also to bring out the best in others. And if you want to get feedback on how to cover fears and insecurities based on each individual personality, at a different moment we can do an episode where we go in depth with each individual personality type, how to approach it. And so I think that covers it for today. Anything you want to add?
No, I think we're good.
Awesome. So, well, thank you very much for tuning in once again. For those of you who are tuning in live, for those of you who are listening to us on other platforms, thank you for listening to us. And we actually are happy to announce that now we are on multiple platforms. We have just submitted the podcast to Spotify, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, 10 different platforms. We will be on iTunes soon. I don't think it's gotten approved just yet, but we have submitted it to many different platforms. So if you have a podcast platform that you use, type in Develop Development and see if we're there. If we're not there yet, write to us at contact@developdevelopment.com, or in the comments in this video, tell us what platform you're using. We will check if it's one that's undergoing approval process or one that we can add, but we certainly are very focused on sharing this content with you guys on as many platforms as possible for free to enrich your lives. And if you have any questions, you have any doubts, any requests for content covered, also please put that in the comments below, or at contact@developdevelopment.com. And if you want to see more of this, don't forget to like and subscribe, and click the bell to get notified when we have future episodes, basically every week at the same time, same place. But we also have obviously a lot of other free content on this channel, and we are about to enrich this channel a lot. So stay tuned for that. Within the next coming weeks, you'll see a lot more content. So that covers it. See you next week.
See you next time.
Thank you very much.